These are the roads Marco Polo traveled 700 years ago, from Italy to my home country of China. 10,000 kilometers, all the way to the court of the legendary ruler of the Mongolian Empire, Kublai Khan. Walking the same route that Marco Polo took, I wonder how much his journey and stories have shaped the world, and how much his name means to both Europe and Asia. Marco Polo lived in China for 17 years. I've been in Europe for 14. Walking around his hometown of Venice, I'm reminded of the night I left China and the sense of stepping into the unknown. I imagine young Marco Polo must have felt this too.
It must have been a challenge for him 700 years ago, and it would probably be a challenge for me now as well, especially with a language that I don't know.
In Venice, I met young athletes from both China and Italy who were competing in a dragon boat race. It's one of many events being held to mark the 700-year anniversary of Marco Polo's death.
Sport helps to bring us closer. It's a common ground that we can share with foreign countries.
To my surprise, I discovered that even Venice University has its own dragon boat racing team.
It was serendipity. I actually met a girl who graduated from a university in Venice, and she was working in Quanzhou. She invited me to join the dragon boat team. It's a team sport. It's about the joy of working together, rowing in different places, collective pride, the connection between humans and nature.
The dragon boat race is called the Marco Polo Cup. The Italian adventurer has remained a household name to this day, an enduring icon through the centuries. But why is he still so well known? What is it about his journey that continues to inspire generations, including people like me and so many young people, hundreds of years later? I realized that in the city where Marco Polo was born and raised, there's no statue of him. We don't even know what he looked like, as no painting of him was made during his lifetime. His image, constructed by words, exists only in museums, historical archives, and most importantly in the book, The Travels of Marco Polo, which he didn't write himself. After returning from his 24-year journey, he was taken prisoner during a war between Venice and Genoa. His cellmate, Rustichello da Pisa, wrote down Marco Polo's adventures, and it became the most influential and detailed European account of Asia, shaping the West's fantasies about the East for centuries.
For the first time, a book showed Asia. It's not an Asia populated by monstrous creatures and full of wonders. It's an extremely concrete Asia, made up, of course, of valuable goods, silk, precious stones, spices, but also of cities, of people. For the first time, Europe discovered this continent.
Marco Polo shared in great detail in the book what it was like to travel along the ancient Silk Road. But how it would be to travel the Silk Road today, I can't help but wonder. Starting in 1271, It took Marco Polo 3 years to travel from Venice to China. This year, two Venetians, Alberto and Dino, 64 and 67 years old respectively, aim to complete the same route in just 100 days, on bicycles.
We want to pay tribute to our fellow citizen with this journey, following in his footsteps. We would like to paint a picture of what the Silk Road is in the third millennium.
With just 2 bags each and a camera mounted on their handlebars, the two friends begin their journey from the European gateway of the Silk Road, Venice. They document their entire journey as a video diary.
Marco Polo is the desire to know, the desire to understand.
They must be strategic about their choice of route, as geopolitical tensions and safety are the first things they must consider.
We had to slalom between wars. We had to absolutely avoid Russia. We wanted to and had to avoid Ukraine. Iran is also not so advisable at this time.
Access to some countries is unpredictable.
Yuhu! Adrenalina pura!
We enter Azerbaijan, unbelievable.
Azerbaijan, incredibile!
We've been waiting since noon. By the way, we will arrive in Turkmenbashi tomorrow afternoon. Let's face this new leap into the void, into the dark, because we are entering Turkmenistan, which is in some way a peculiar country. They say, I say under my breath, that it's second to North Korea in terms of curtailing personal freedoms.
Aboard a Caspian Sea ferry, they reach the shores of Turkmenistan.
Stage 30. We are in Turkmenistan.
Marco Polo described the vast, harsh deserts of Central Asia, most likely parts of the Karakum Desert in modern-day Turkmenistan. Nomadic tribes facilitated trade across these inhospitable regions. For Alberto and Dino, navigating the region by bike remains a significant challenge. Following the ancient Silk Road, they arrive in Bukhara, one of the most well-preserved medieval cities in Central Asia. Its urban fabric has remained largely intact for more than 2,000 years.
The bicycle gives you a totally different perspective, the perspective of slowness. It is a magnifying glass that makes you understand the world. You abstract yourself. You get inside the panorama. Maybe that same feeling that the Polo family also felt. Going slowly with donkeys, a little bit on foot, by boat. We are trying to get into China, and we can't. Earlier, we got to a place where there was only a highway. They sent us back, and we had to go around 25 kilometers, and came to another highway. So maybe this time it will work.
È la volta buona. Eccoci.
Alberto and Dino have finally crossed the Chinese border, but their journey isn't over yet. With their small camera, they continue documenting their adventure. They still have more than 4,000 kilometers of paddling ahead till they reach their final destination, Beijing. Finally, after 100 days of travel, They've made it. They've reached the capital city. I'm happy to meet them and hear all about their adventures.
When you travel like this on a bicycle, it's nice. Because you realize that the world is really better than one thinks. Because people help us. Even today, at 3 o'clock, a stranger stopped us and gave us 2 bottles of water, like you gave us. Because we were dehydrated. People helped us so much, and that's the lesson. Traveling always has to be an act of humility. You have to get closer to others. You have to share tastes, food. We had to share Chinese tastes, which are not really the same as ours. We are not used to them. But that's what traveling is.
Wow, we like spaghetti.
When a historical figure accomplishes something monumental, it's easy to give the individual all the credit. But the era, the context, plays a role. Marco Polo was without a doubt in the right place at exactly the right time to leave his mark on history. I meet the 2 cyclists again in the Italian embassy in Beijing at a celebration for them and to honor Marco Polo.
Marco Polo was one of the many travelers, of the many envoys, one of the many people living in this really very diversified and wide space, which was the Yuan dynasty's Chinese empire. And you see it, for instance, when you visit Quanzhou, which, by the way, in the book of Marco Polo is called Zeit. This was a multicultural, multi-ethnical, multi-religious place where a lot of people from foreign countries not only lived but also thrived and were a connection through the so-called maritime Silk Road with faraway countries.
The ancient maritime Silk Road began in Quanzhou and ended in Venice. It holds great significance for researchers worldwide.
This century of economic power had pushed the Venetians as far as the Black Sea coast, where the last Western outposts were. And there was an encounter there with a foreign power that did something exceptional and incomparable in human history. The Mongols managed to go from a mass of semi-nomadic tribes quarreling with each other into a military power capable of unifying under one power all of continental Asia, basically from Korea to the borders of Turkey. This created conditions that had never been seen before, in which anyone could travel freely throughout Asia without risking their life. That was the key thing.
During the peak of the Mongol peace, trade flourished along the Silk Road, extending from the Mediterranean to China, turning the key cities along the route into vibrant cosmopolitan centers. Zhangye, where I am now, was one such city. With a population of more than 1 million, Zhangye is by no means a particularly large international city in the vast expanse of China today. But when Marco Polo arrived here, it was a true metropolitan hub. Going around Zhangye, I've discovered that many of the historical sites he mentioned in his book can still be found today. Matisi, a temple compound in the suburbs of Zhangye, holds statues and wall paintings that date back to the Yuan dynasty. Marco Polo wasn't particularly familiar with Buddhism, referring to its figures as idols. In today's China, various forms of Buddhism remain vibrant along the ancient Silk Road. Zhangye's Dafo Temple, where legend says Kublai Khan was born, Marco Polo also set foot inside.
马可波罗是来过往大佛寺的，他的游记里还特意提到了这里。他对于大佛寺的壮丽和神秘印象深刻，这也让世界更加了解了我们西夏的文化和大佛寺的故事。
If Marco Polo were to walk around Zhangye today, people would surely stop and stare at him as a foreigner, a rarity in and around the city. But during his visit 700 years ago, he could have been just one of many people with colored eyes, as the Yuan administration categorized them.
So I think that the significance is that Marco Polo is one of the many who lived in this age of early globalization, and of course the south of China was extremely sophisticated, very developed.
Quanzhou, at the southern tip of China, just across from Taiwan, is a city where every religion found in China is represented.
它是世上2个货物吞吐量最高的港口之一，地理位置极为优越，商贾货物往来无数。大韩在此港及此城课税亦无数。这就是马可波罗口中的刺桐城，也就是现在的泉州。
In the old city of Quanzhou, you will find a religious site on almost every street. Christianity, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, Islam, and more all coexist here. Quanzhou's Islamic community dates back to the 7th century, and the oldest mosque in China is located here. Even the long-lost religion of Manichaeism has left its mark. The only statue of Mani can be found in the suburbs of Quanzhou. In Kaiyuan Temple, a Buddhist site in the city center, you can even find statues of Hindu gods. Under Kublai Khan's rule in the 13th century, Quanzhou, with its diverse religions and merchants from all over the world, was like modern-day New York. It was the world's maritime trade center during the Song and Yuan dynasties. It's hard to say whether our world is more open now than it was 700 years ago. But cities like Zhangye and Quanzhou were undoubtedly more international and open during Marco Polo's time. It was through Marco Polo's descriptions that Europe first came to know China in such detail. Inside the China Millennium Monument, a relief depicts 100 historical figures who shaped Chinese history. Marco Polo is one of only 2 foreigners included.
This exhibition was a product of cultural diplomacy, so we wanted an exhibition to bridge culture. The meaning of this exhibition is bridging Italy and China and following the inspiration, getting inspired by Marco Polo itself. This child vest is so iconic. We choose to have in our exhibition because it's inspiring. It's telling a story of West meeting the East.
Giorgia Cestaro, an Italian art historian and one of the exhibition's curators, has lived in China for almost 10 years.
I remember the first time I landed in Beijing. I was feeling so lost that I still have impressed in my mind the smell, the sounds, all those characters. I could not understand anything. So in that way, I really thought about Marco Polo and all the travelers back to the time, because I was feeling totally lost, and I was thinking about how brave they were to go to so distant lands. We don't know anything. So one side of the medal is the fear of the unknown, but on the other side there is the excitement of learning so much. I remember I was feeling so impatient because I need to know everything now.
I wonder how Marco Polo felt when he finally arrived in China.
I want to visit the places Marco Polo once traveled to, such as Uzbekistan and places like Turkey. I truly want to visit these places. Originally, I only knew about his exchange between China and Italy. I didn't realize he encountered so many other interesting things. Now I feel an even stronger desire to visit these places and see them for myself.
In our current and future cultural exchanges, this also offers us some insights. Nowadays, the exchanges between countries around the world are becoming more frequent, and we continually commemorate and reflect on these interactions. In the future, in our social lives, we can be more inclusive and open to embrace the diverse cultures from all over the world, engaging in friendly social interactions, even in cultural creation. For example, in the place we are now, there are many creative works behind us, created by children based on Marco Polo and the cultural exchange between China and Italy.
This is what a 10-year-old child thinks of Italy. And I like this one very much because this is the imagination of how Marco Polo eat hot pot. And hot pot is actually quite a popular dish back then in the Yuan dynasty. This is also a very beautiful one.
It's the wanderlust, the thirst for adventure that drives us to explore a world that feels so distant and cultures that seem so different. It's the spirit of an explorer. Yet for every explorer, there comes a time when the pull of home grows stronger and the journey inevitably leads us back to where we began. Only when we've traveled so far do we truly understand the meaning of home. Just as only after seeing Asia can one fully grasp why Europe is what it is.
It is said that Marco Polo left China from Quanzhou, most likely from this very port.
Throughout history, the West have often viewed the East with a mix of fascination and fear. But today, that sense has become mutual. To me, Europe and Asia have often mirrored each other, reflecting both their differences and shared humanity.
It's the freedom of the gaze and the putting aside of prejudices, curiosity for the other without arrogance, without a sense of superiority. Marco Polo is not a divisive figure unlike other travellers, because he does not approach the other trying to conquer it. It meets him, and it is truly one of the encounters in our history that has brought us the most.
Often, it's through cultural traditions, like dragon boat racing, that we are reminded how we all share a piece of history together.
In today's society, although communication has been so developed, we actually should learn more from Marco Polo, his spirit of exchange with and tolerance for different cultures. The whole international situation is not very encouraging at the moment, so we need more tolerance.
When Marco Polo came to China in the 13th century, the Emperor Kublai Khan asked, "You've told so many stories, why have you never mentioned your hometown, Venice?" Marco Polo replied, "Because all my stories contain my hometown. Today I can come from China to Marco Polo's hometown. It's meaningful, and through dragon boat racing it feels like I've come full circle back to Venice."
再次回到威尼斯。
Perhaps we humans are wired to fear what is different and unfamiliar, which makes the moment we recognize our collective humanity all the more profound.